We now take you to St. Anne's Chapel on the campus of the Diocese of Fresno for a pastoral message from Bishop Armando Ochoa, reflecting on the now concluded visit of Pope Francis to the United States. Bishop Ochoa will also take questions from local media. Here now is the Most Reverend Armando Ochoa, Bishop of the Diocese of Fresno.
Good morning and welcome to each and every one of you. Thank you for joining us here this morning. Well, I'll have an opportunity to have a pastoral reflection on the limited but powerful experience that I had, along with many other Catholics in the media as well as worldwide. These past few days have been an extraordinary gift to all of us, Catholics and people of other faith traditions and all people of goodwill. We're invited to draw closer together to receive a message of hope and encouragement. And indeed, we did. Like our drought-stricken valley anticipates its first sip of seasonal rainfall, our Holy Father quenched the deeper thirst of many souls with life-giving words of love, compassion, mercy, and yes, justice. Those who made time to listen with ears of their hearts now celebrate this message that gives voice to the weak, the vulnerable, and the underserved among us. We heard the Holy Father speak to our call to care for all of God's creation, including the human person from the moment of conception to natural death. He brought the immigrant, the person on death row, the family that suffers from an economic culture of exclusion into focus, confident that we may see and hear their cry for help. He referenced the environmental concerns within our common home, confident that we are capable of adjusting our priorities to heal the damages inflicted by the human family. We have been asked to step out of our religious and political extremes and the indifferences that sabotage productive dialogue and divides so much that we may pursue pathways that will lead us to encountering and accompanying one another on our life journey in a way that all may live with dignity and hope. At the World Meeting of Families in Philadelphia, we were reminded of the great importance of marriage and the family within our society. We were encouraged to recommit ourselves to supporting all aspects of family life while reaching out to those families that are struggling, wounded, and in great need of healing. Whether we identify with those who welcome the Pope's message or those who dislike it intensely, we have all been challenged to examine our relationship with our Creator, our fellow human beings, and yes, all creation. Pope Francis's encyclical, The Joy of the Gospel, and his most recent encyclical on the environment, Laudato Si, are bridges that our Holy Father has provided to bring us all together, to guide us and move us forward along a path of healing, reconciliation, and yes, restoration. In the Diocese of Fresno, we will be using material entitled A Year of Encounter with Pope Francis that will be used in parish communities and interfaith gatherings as well. All will be welcome, and it is my hope that the seeds of love, compassion, mercy, and justice planted during this phenomenal week with Pope Francis will produce an abundant harvest. Mis hermanos y hermanas, estos últimos días han ido un regalo extraordinario para todos nosotros, católicos, gente de otra fe y tradiciones, y todas las personas de buena voluntad fueron invitados para recibir un mensaje de esperanza y un estímulo que en realidad lo necesitamos. Así como nuestra sequía en el valle está anticipado sus primeras lluvias estacionales, nuestro Santo Padre aplacó la profunda sed de muchas almas con palabras vivificantes de amor, compasión, misericordia y justicia. Aquellos tuvieron tiempo para escuchar con su corazón, ahora celebran este mensaje que es la voz del débil, el vulnerable y el más necesitado entre nosotros. At this time, I will be happy to take any questions that possibly might come from those who have gathered here this morning. I might just add that I was not in New York and I was not in Philadelphia, but like many of yourselves, I was trying to capture as much as I could on television and try to keep the different venues as impactful as they were alive in my heart and in my soul. So, but I'm open to any questions that I'll try to share with you. Yes?
Thank you for your address, and I heard, I guess you were just at the canonization of Father Sarah, right? According to your...
Yes, I was, and I brought back a few of the artifacts that you might look at later on.
I wondered if you could share a little bit more about that experience and the significance of Father Sarah here in our valley, and also if you wouldn't mind addressing, I know there's been some controversy around his canonization, if there's anything you want to say about that.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the second part of that.
The second part, if you could also address, there's been some controversy about the canonization of Father Sarah, if you would also like to speak to that, along with the significance of him becoming a saint here in our area, of course.
Certainly. I was, like many of my brother bishops here in the United States, we were invited to all or parts of this wonderful 6 or 7 day experience. But many of us chose, especially from the West Coast and the Southwest, chose really to go to Washington, D.C. It was going to be probably for us an opportunity because the Pope was going to be speaking to the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, and so we kind of saw that this was an invitation, we might say a command performance. He didn't have to command us to come, but we were very happy to go. And part of that, we began with morning prayer, what we call morning prayer, midday prayer, and we were in the cathedral in Washington, D.C. That was the experience at 10 o'clock. Then we gathered together, not with the Holy Father. He was out feeding the poor, and we went over and had a very simple lunch with my brother bishops in preparation for the big Mass that was going to take place in the afternoon. So yes, I was privileged along with probably 150 of my brother bishops, and my goodness gracious, 25,000 they were saying, that on the campus of the University of the Catholic University of America. And it was a very powerful experience. I had a great opportunity. I was sitting kind of on the right side and right in front of the ambo where the Holy Father was, about 5 pews back. So it was a great opportunity to experience the Passion, even though he was reading from the script. But it was just a great moment for us, and especially from Southern California. I was born and reared in Southern California. My former office was on the campus of Mission San Fernando in the San Fernando Valley. So there was somewhat of a connection of our Fray Junipero Serra, now San Junipero Serra. And it was a wonderful, powerful experience, especially to see one of our Native Americans who brought up a relic of San Francisco, San Fray Junipero Serra, and brought it up during the Mass, during that part of the actual canonization. So it was really a powerful experience, and he was the only Native American presence, but it was a credible presence because he spoke to us as Catholic bishops and was deeply, deeply sharing his experience and I forget his tribe, but he's from the Diocese of Monterey. But he shared not only the joy of this particular day, because he was privileged to bring up the relic, but he shared many of the sorrows. But he actually said, in a different grouping of the California bishops, that even in spite of all the things, the negativity, that thanks be to God, to the likes of San Junipero Serra, his family now and generations past have been enriched by our Catholic faith. And yes, we are aware that there are mixed signals. There are very many different signals that certainly we see. But as a result of all this dialogue that our Holy Father is asking, we are now going to relook at the curriculum for the 3rd and 4th graders, not only in the public school system, but the Catholic school system, to really re-examine really just what is really being said about our native peoples in California. So yes, we are aware of the controversies, and I certainly have kept them very much in our prayer, because he was the only representative that we know of at that Mass. Thank you.
Bishop Ochoa, there's been a lot of excitement with the Pope coming to the country, and a lot of that was on the East Coast, but how do you take that message and bring it here to the Valley faithful, and how do you spread that out and bring that same message here and excitement here?
Well, we encourage people of good faith, Catholic and non-Catholic, to gather in watch and listen sessions to really see not only the Holy Father, but to experience what it was, and then over coffee share what was taking place. And so as a follow-up really to his visit, I've really been enthused, because we have had an interfaith gathering. In fact, the night before I left for Washington, D.C., we had an interfaith gathering at the cathedral. Some of you were there present. And it was just so enriching to see people of good faith from religious denominations other than ourselves so enthused with the anticipation of what the Holy Father was going to say about so many different topics. And so what we hope to do is gather together as members of the Catholic faithful for the diocese in different pilot parishes throughout the diocese. We have 36,000 square miles in our 8 counties, but we have different parishes where we're going to gather together with materials and reflect upon what we heard our Holy Father was saying. And then hopefully it's going to, by osmosis, by our lives, and just as our Holy Father was a man not so much of the printed page, but a man of images and sign value, beautiful, topical ways that he stopped. First of all, riding in the little Fiat. You know, I was so amazed, because I saw the Fiat from here to the front door, and I said, that really is a small little car. But to see him stick his arm out and start waving to everybody, including the bishops, that was powerful. And to see him stop the car and get out of the car and go over to that young boy and bless him and kiss him on the forehead. I think he had cerebral palsy. And to see the effect on the mother, to see not only in words, but how he affected so many different people. It's going to be, it'll be interesting to see how we follow up. Just yesterday, Amanda, it was just wonderful. I was approached by a member of our clergy of the diocese, and he said, Bishop, I need to share this with you. Our daughter, he's a member of the clergy, our daughter is a lesbian, left the church many years ago, but she called up and said to her mom and her dad, Mom and Dad, this man Francis has touched my life. I'm going to Mass for the first time yesterday in many, many years. So these wonderful signs. We'll never hear all the stories. I think in the weeks and months to come. We'll hear these powerful, powerful testimonies, and I'm really looking forward to hearing them, sharing a little bit of my own experience with them as well.
Bishop Ochoa, great segue because you were bringing up one of my questions just now. The Pope has really kind of touched upon the LGBT community and how we should have some compassion for those folks. How does the diocese here in Fresno plan to do that and extend an arm or a welcoming hand to the LGBT community?
I think it's a very good question, but people of goodwill straight across the board, whether they belong to a particular community or not, at our parish that we call St. Paul's, our Newman Center, they have a pilot program now reaching out to persons with homosexual orientations, and that is it's a wonderful venue because they're right there on the fringe of Fresno, our university, our Fresno State University, and so consequently, it's an outreach to people, and it's a pilot program. But I think what our Holy Father is asking that all of us be open, make the doors wide open to people of all goodwill, and let's make sure that no one is going to be on the outside apparently looking in because they feel God's grace is not going to reach out to them.
Do you anticipate any pushback from the Catholic community?
You know, I belong to a church of sinners, and I'll be the first to admit I go to confession as well. Absolutely, there's going to be pushback. There has been pushback to our Holy Father's outreach to all people straight across the board. So I anticipate the human condition is the human condition. Que sera, sera. What will be, will be. And the human condition includes each and every one of us. But I would hope that he has once again challenged all of us, no matter where we're coming from, to be open to those on the outside, the marginated, the underserved of our society. And I think that was so well demonstrated by not only his visit, but his presence. I don't know if some of you saw his outreach. It touches me very deeply because I enjoy going to our detention centers and our jails for confessions and for Mass. So to see him being present yesterday morning, to making time to reach out and to give a message of hope to some of those folks who feel. There was only one man that I saw with tears in his eyes, but there was the better part of 100 detainees there. I think that is really a picture's worth 1,000 words, but I think that's what his message was trying to bring about.
One last question, sorry. He spoke of various topics very important to the Valley and to the state of California, really, but immigration is one of them, and he even went as far as quoting, all men are created equal. What do we plan to do here as a church community to help those who are trying to become legal in this country or look for an opportunity here?
We don't have a department for immigration services in my diocese. That being said, we had people coming out of the woodwork who are wanting to pro bono take on and look at these particular issues. The Church's constant stance is we continue to support legal migration straight across the board. My mother and father came during the religious persecution in Mexico to the United States, and many people in my generation have been given an opportunity of a life in this experience rather than during that particular time, during the religious persecution. And so consequently, yes, we have the 11 million or so. We will continue to reach out to people of goodwill. And I think the message that was given to Congress, he challenged people on both sides of the aisle to make every concerted effort to see what we can do to bring those people out of the shadows. And so it translates, how are we going to be a welcoming community? I was so deeply touched by one of the venues that he said, and I think it was the Council on the Family in Philadelphia, how he went off script again, and he said, you know, be proud of your tradition. Be proud of your tradition. Don't forget it. Celebrate that, because it brings richness to our communities, and it gave life and meaning. God willing, we don't know how that's going to translate across both aisles, how it's going to do to fix a broken immigration system in the United States, but we will continue to really push for new immigration laws that are going to respect the human dignity straight across the board.
Particular messages from Pope Francis that you think will resonate more with people here in the Valley? I know he also talked about things like poverty, incarceration, climate change, things like that.
You know, I think not just in our own Central Valley here in California, but his messages on immigration, on climate change, on the incarceration, the death penalty, all those, I think, straight across the board. No matter where we are, people of goodwill might have been taken aback by some of those things, but yes, he realized that. But the role of a prophet is traditionally, through Scripture, to make the comfortable a little less comfortable and the uncomfortable a little more comfortable. And that is going to be our challenge. People of goodwill joining hands, people of goodwill working to really build up God's kingdom. And that is straight across the board. And that's going to be interesting. What's going to be the Francis effect now that he's back in Rome? And I think that's going to be a real challenge for all of us. How are we going to capture that and put meat onto the Francis effect after these wonderful days? And the honeymoon of these days will be over, but how are we going to translate that? That's going to be pastoral practice, but I think Pope Francis has given us a shot in the arm. He talked to us as bishops, and I know that he said, as he talked to us as bishops at St. Matthew's, can love your priests. Make sure that you get to know your priests. And as a father watches over his family, you watch over those entrusted to your pastoral care, beginning with those who share the Roman collar with you. And I thought it was very, very powerful. In other words, physician, heal thyself. Let us begin with ourselves as we try to reach out to others.
Any thoughts you have to people in the Valley now that you're back, just about this whole message, this whole experience, or any kind of message you'd like to leave them with?
I was deeply touched, as many, but I think one of the messages that really hit me, I just, right between the eyes, and it was, I think, the 11 o'clock news, whatever, I forget what time it was last night, but the Holy Father was talking, I think, to the American public, but to us as bishops. And he was referring to the victim survivors of sexual abuse. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, apparently one of the 5 victim survivors with whom he prayed before that closing Mass yesterday shared with the Holy Father that his mother, when he told her that he was abused by a priest, left the Catholic Church, became an atheist. And this victim survivor, I think he was one of the 2 men, then said to the Holy Father, but my mother died an atheist. And without skipping a beat, our Holy Father looked him in the eye and said something to the effect, you know, I could imagine God welcoming your mother into heaven. You know, that beautiful thing. I think that message was one of his parting messages, at least to me, at 11 o'clock last night. That openness, who am I to judge? Let's leave that in God's hands. But let's not play God. Your mother, without a doubt, is in God's hands. And I think that's the message we have. Let us continue to build up God's kingdom to those whose lives we should be touching in many different ways. And let's not point a finger, because every time we point a finger, we have 3 more fingers pointing right back at us. So my message is one of hope, one of reconciliation, one of invitation for those who might have been deeply touched, Catholic or non-Catholic, believer or non-believer. And that was so touching again when the Holy Father said, if you're a non-believer, I ask for your prayers. And if you can't pray, then send good wishes my way. And I think, wow, what a powerful thing. Seeking out people where they are at. That's what Jesus did. And I would hope and pray that my brother priest in the diocese will take that message to take people where they're at. How can we reach people where they're at and begin to invite them on this journey of faith? Well, I thank you very much for the time that you've given here this morning. May God bless each and every one of you. And please feel free to look at the memorabilia that I brought back. There's a relic of Junipero Serra that I've had for a number of years, and now it's very, very timely. These other memorial messages and memorial coins that were given to us when we were there at Washington, D.C. So thank you very much for your time and your presence here today.
You've been watching coverage of a news conference by Bishop Armando Ochoa reflecting on the now concluded visit of Pope Francis to the United States.